A relationship with God that's not personal is not a relationship at all. Because of this, Pope Benedict said, "Let us ask ourselves, how is my personal relationship with God?" Whether you have a personal relationship with God or not, you're invited to hear everyday Catholics share their stories of welcoming God personally and the difference it has made in their lives. Everyday Catholics are saying a personal yes to God. Listen to their stories and accept the invitation to say a deeper, more personal yes to God yourself.
One of the greatest things that I struggle with is understanding how it is that he could continue to want to use me or you or anybody else in light of our shortcomings to do good things. And he does. And no matter how many times I might trip up, mess up, he continues to put people in my path and give me another chance. You know, one of the
we think we have to be worthy to have this relationship with God. And the reality is we don't. The Bible says very clearly that we're not worthy, and we're loved anyway.
That's right.
And that's what's called the good news.
Right. And I think the apostles are the perfect example of that, right? They were all fairly messed. They were a mess.
Yeah.
You know, and that just helps to reaffirm the fact that the Lord that we serve and the God that we love, he loves us in the mess.
Amen. So you got older, and eventually I know you made a more personal decision to welcome God. But before we get to that, you eventually got married. We have a picture of you and your beautiful bride. So tell us about how you came to meet your wife and marry your wife, and where you see God fitting into all that.
So early in my sophomore year at St. John's University, I was in a math class, calculus or whatever it was, and sitting in the back of the class with a group of friends of mine. And out the doorway is this beautiful blonde girl waving kind of frantically, trying to get the attention of someone in the class. And I thought to myself, wow, I'm sure she's looking for a boyfriend. And I happened to turn to this girlfriend, not a girlfriend, but a girlfriend of mine, and say, do you know who that is? And she said, oh yeah, that's my friend Chris. And I said, I need to know her. And so she introduced us, and October 23rd of 1987, we went out, and we've been together ever since.
Praise God.
Yeah. Wow. I can't understand, again, it'll be a recurring theme throughout our conversation, right? I can't understand why God has done the things for me that he has. I really can't. Yeah. I'm truly unworthy of all of it. Yeah. She is at the top of that list.
So at this time in your life, you meet your wife. How would you describe your relationship with God at that time?
So for me, it was nearly non-existent. Latter part of high school, freshman year of college, faith in God I was working. I was at that point running security for the Empire State Building on weekends. I was working a lot. Periodically, I would try to sneak out and go to Mass. There was a church right down the street from the Empire State Building that I would get to Mass, but it was, sporadic at best. When I met Christine, that kind of all changed.
Oh, yeah.
My father is a very devout Catholic, raised his family and his daughters to be as well. Church and Mass on Sunday were non-negotiable. And if I wanted to see her, especially on a Saturday night or a Sunday, church came first.
So this is your father-in-law.
My father-in-law,
Yeah,
Pope John.
Pope John. So if you wanted to be with his daughter, you had to be with Jesus Christ too?
Well, I don't know if my father-in-law ever made that, made it a stipulation.
Yeah.
But if I wanted to spend time with Christine, she was going to Mass.
Okay. And so that was
and so that was it. And interestingly enough, what we would do is we'd get out of class on Friday, or I would go and get her on Saturday, and go back to my parents in Monmouth County, New Jersey. And when we would get home, I would tell my parents we're going to go to church. And so my mom and dad started to come to church with us.
Wow.
So my wife really kind of led my family back to God.
Wow. And so so you've got a turning point when you're a kid. You're into Catholic school. That kind of puts you a little closer to God in some ways in your consciousness. And then your girlfriend, who becomes your wife, also is kind of bringing that in, just with the practice of the faith. Just
correct.
Yeah. And so how would you say your relationship with God went from there? Because we can show you the other picture here. We've got you and your kids. So kind of give me how your relationship with God looked from the time you were married to the time you had kids. Like, where were you at early on in your career, with your family? Tell us about all that time.
So after I get out of college, I had made I was originally planning on going to law school, and had clerked for a New York City judge and worked for a law firm, and was miserable.
Okay.
Realized quickly that at least being a landlord-tenant in landlord-tenant court was not really of interest to me. I had a minor in economics.
Okay.
And so had always had an interest in the economy and the markets. My family being entrepreneurial and being exposed to the business world and business people was always something of interest. So I answered an ad in the New York Times for Wall Street opportunity, unlimited income potential, took the interview, got the job. Little did I know that it was cold calling for Lehman Brothers in 1990, making $4.75 an hour.
Wow.
So I was commuting back and forth from Monmouth County, New Jersey. I was spending more money commuting than I was actually earning. Shortly thereafter, Christine and I were married. We lived down the Jersey Shore. And then the children came along. And through that process, again, God was our weekly obligation.
Okay.
So church was a non-negotiable. But we would go and we would do our 45 minutes and we would leave. And then I would get back to planning my future and building my career and rising through the ranks on Wall Street.
Okay.
And then the children came along.
So God had 45 minutes of your life a week.
Yeah.
And I'm sure an impact beyond that maybe you don't see, but not a conscious
That's right.
impact. Yeah.
That's right. He always had his hand.
Yeah.
But I didn't see the hand.
Yeah. So tell me about your time. You were working at Lehman Brothers, working on Wall Street. Can you describe what was that like as a young guy, married, and on Wall Street, kind of working in that world?
At times it was quite conflicted. You're surrounded by people who are doing drugs. They're living loose lives. They're chasing the almighty dollar. In some instances, when I was at Lehman, you see decisions and behavior and actions that are less than stellar, let's just say.
Okay.
And in fact, my Lehman career came to an end because of such an instance.
Okay. What happened? What's the story there?
Well, we would have a sales meeting once a week, And I've always been a voracious reader.
Mm-hmm.
So when I went to work on Wall Street, one of the things that I would do constantly would be read prospectuses and red herrings. Basically the books that describe the companies that are being brought to market in a public offering,
Okay.
to understand their history, their background. Anyway, I was working for a fairly significant advisor at the time, opening up new accounts for him. We had a sales meeting, and I came to learn that he had 10,000 shares of a particular stock, that if he sold it to whomever, he would have a $10,000 day.
Okay.
And I had previously read the background on this company and knew that it was not the kind of organization that I would want to see anybody own.
Okay.
And he said to me, I don't care who you sell the stock to.
Mm-hmm.
Call your parents, call your aunts, call your uncles, call friends, neighbors. I don't care. Just sell the stock.
So they want you to sell stock that you know is not the right thing to do.
Correct.
You couldn't in good conscience advise your customers to purchase that stock and consider that actual advice.
Correct.
Yeah.
Now, in today's world, it's called fiduciary responsibility, right? We have an obligation to do what's right for our customers, to to live the golden rule.
Right.
Right?
Yeah.
To do unto others as we would like done unto us.
That's a good idea. I wonder who came up with that.
Yeah. Smart teacher.
Yeah.
Again, never, at that point in my life, there was not any of that connection. I just knew it wasn't right.
But there's still an unease.
I knew it wasn't right.
Yeah.
And I made that very clear, and explained to him that while I understood fully what it meant to him and to his family if he were to sell the stock, I wouldn't sell a single share.
Wow. And that obviously didn't do much for your career, I assume.
No. You want the PG version of...
Sure, I'll take the PG version.
So I simply explained to him that I thought if making $10,000 was that important to him, that he should feel free to sell the stock and make the money. And he proceeded to explain to me that I was going to sell that stock.
Okay.
And I told him that that wasn't going to happen.
Okay.
So it turned into a slightly heated discussion, and
wow.
My resignation letter went to management, and that was it. And he literally walked me to the elevator as I had my box of belongings.
Wow.
And the last thing he said to me was, "You'll never amount to anything in this business," as the elevator door closed.
Wow. So how did you process that? What are you thinking as you're going down that elevator and you're going to go home to your family at this time? Do you have kids at this time?
No, we were still we were just married a few years, and the children had not come along yet.
Okay, so you're going to go home and tell your wife this great news about your stand for Christ. What were you thinking about at that time? I mean, because your faith is kind of a peripheral thing, and I think personally, I think so many Catholics have a more personal relationship with God than they know.
Yeah.
And that God is more active in their hearts and their minds than they know. And the Catechism says that when we respond to the dictates of our conscience, we are beginning to respond to God. That is another voice talking into our lives, and that's the voice of God speaking into our lives. I mean, if you think about how many times you disagree with your own conscience, and you either, I'll do it, or I won't do it. Well, what is that voice other than God?
It is.
And so there you are, responding to God and to grace, but not conscious of that. And you're going down that elevator, and you're going to go home and talk to your wife. What are you thinking, and how did you approach that conversation?
Well, I was more at peace with it, and the primary reason for that peacefulness, I think, was that picture of the young boy you showed earlier. Right? I've heard, you're not big enough, you're not strong enough, you're not fast enough, you're not smart. I've heard all of those things my whole life. I've been underestimated.
Yeah.
And those people and their words have always been fuel for me.
Yeah.
I've always looked, and I remember consciously saying, in fact, I think I verbalized it to him before the door closed, "We'll see."
Yeah.
And when the door closed and the elevator went down, I made a commitment that I was going to do it right, and that I was going to show him.
Yeah.
I've never seen him again, but
Right.
I don't have to.
Right. Right.
And within a short window of time, I was in Merrill Lynch's world headquarters office in the executive dining room with the owner of a professional sports team and his board of directors and
Wow.
as clients. And I think that's one of the things that I'm most proud of as it relates to my career, is that I've never sacrificed my moral compass for the sake of money. And thankfully I haven't had to. And so one of her friends that she had worked with had said to us, "You should come over to our parish. You guys would love it. Why don't you come over? And I just felt like I was almost betraying the home team.
Sure.
Right?
Sure.
So I don't know what had spurred inside of me, but one Sunday or Saturday evening or Sunday, I just said to Chris, "Why don't we go?"
Yeah.
And so we did, took the girls with us, and we pulled up on the side of the church and got out of the car, and there was a dog pen, and 200-pound golden retrievers came to greet the girls with their toys. And they said, "This is church?"
Yeah.
And we walked in, and I just, I felt the presence of God unlike I had ever felt him. I didn't know, again, at the time, consciously, what I was experiencing.
Yeah.
I just realized that there was something different about this place.
Was that during the Mass, before the Mass?
It was right on entrance.
Yeah, so even before the first song plays.
Didn't speak to a single human being, didn't hear a tune of an organ, nothing. We walked into the church, and there was something that just said, this is different.
Yeah, so it wasn't a dynamics presenter.
No,
it was just
God.
God just had something to say.
Just the Holy Spirit, and again, just a feeling that I got at that point in time. So anyway, fast forward a few weeks, and we take off. It turns out we were one of the last flights to leave Philadelphia International before they shut the airport down for the storm. We land in Montego Bay, Jamaica. Come to find out that half of the island is in a state of emergency, had been decimated by the storm. And here our side of the island was fine. And we spent 6 or 7 days off the coast of Jamaica on a private island and eating and drinking like nothing was going on. But all the while worrying about the kids and my parents here and our family and friends. And upon our return, we went back to the new church to Mass. And after receiving communion, I got down on my knee. Now, we didn't know anybody.
Yeah.
And I'll remember it till the day I die. 3rd row from the back, right side of the church, sitting there. Received communion, went back to our pew, got down on my knees. And the best that I could explain it is I guess that I prayed my most honest prayer. It was simple. I just thanked God for looking out for my family and protecting my children and my parents and our home. And I asked him to care for and look out for those who were less fortunate than we were. And in the silence, I experienced something that changed everything.
And so at this point, you're kind of just a anonymous Catholic in the pew, and you're just praying maybe your first real or your most personal, most honest prayer. It was from deep within you. You had to say this to God, and then you received the Eucharist, and you come back, and then you had an experience. And describe that when you came back from the pew to the pew.
Well, it was really it was strange. Right? As I finished praying and expressing thanks to God and asking him to look out for those who might be less fortunate than we were, as I sat quietly praying, I heard a voice. Not an audible voice, but an internal voice.
Yeah.
And he said, I need you to do more, and I know you can do more.
Wow.
And it was so real, and so startling, to be truthful, that in my brain thought, could I possibly have friends here in this church who are messing with me? Like, is somebody taught? So I turned around, and there were two little old ladies who were like staring at me, wondering what in the world was going on. And it was my wife and my children and nobody else.
Yeah.
And I knew it wasn't them. Yeah. And so I remember I kind of shook my head thinking, what in the world could that possibly have been? That was very strange. And didn't speak a word of it, went home. And for 4 days, he kept coming.
I had an experience like that when I was in 3rd grade, and I never talked about it till I was in college.
Really?
When someone said, do you have a personal relationship with Jesus Christ? And I said, I don't know, but this happened. And it was the first time that I really started to think, wow, I really need to be conversing with this God more. There's something to do here other than just show up on Sunday. And so this is just you and God, and the Eucharist, and this deep spirit-driven experience in your heart saying you need to do more. And and what do you do there?
I give you a lot of credit because I thought I was crazy.
Yeah.
I mean, I'm not kidding. I went around and around and around with him for 4 days.
Really?
And on Thursday of that following week, I literally got up out of my recliner in the family room. Mm-hmm. I walked into my bedroom as my wife was watching TV, and I said, I think you need to take me to the hospital. Wow.
So this was that profound. I'm
not kidding, man. He shook me pretty hard.
Yeah.
And I was thinking to myself, and she said, well, what's going on? And I said, I think I'm either losing my mind.
Wow.
Or I think God might be trying to tell me something. And she looked at me like I had 12 heads, and I knew exactly what she was thinking because I was thinking it. Yeah. And she asked me why in the world I would feel that way, and I explained to her what happened, and she said, I've never had anything like that happen to me. And I said, neither have I, but it keeps coming. Mm-hmm. Over and over and over and over again. He kept coming. And she said, well, whatever you want me to do, just say it, and I'll take you if you want me to.
Wow.
And so I said, well, why don't you do this? Give me till Sunday. Mm-hmm. If it doesn't go away, it's still coming, whatever, then we'll go from there.
Wow.
And so the following Sunday, I was very, very precise with my poor kids were probably thinking, what's going on with Dad? I said, listen, we're going right to the 3rd pew, right back there. And that's exactly what we did. We went in, we sat right in the same spot, got up, went to communion, came back, knelt down, and our church, I don't know if at the time, it ultimately, our crucifix in the church was the crucifix that they used during the papal mass for for Pope Francis's visit for the World Meeting of Families.
Okay.
But anyway, I remember looking up at the Lord on the cross and saying, I don't know if you're talking to me.
Yeah.
I really don't know what's going on. But if you're trying to tell me something, I'm one guy.
Yeah.
What can I possibly do?
Yeah.
That's exactly what I said to him, word for word.
Yeah.
And
so you're thinking, you're either losing your mind, or there's a God who has something to say to you. And let's face it, up to this point in time, you're a pretty grounded guy. I mean, you're working on Wall Street. I mean, you're not like, you are pretty grounded in the professional world, and then you have this experience that shakes you.
Made no sense, man.
Yeah, and it's kind of out of nowhere. It's not like you decided to go to this conference where all these dynamic speakers were. It was just a regular Sunday, and God just says, I'm going to tap you on the shoulder, Bri. Wow.
I can't explain that. I really can. I can only say that if he's willing to do that to me, man, I'm assuming he wants to do it for all of us.
And so where does it go from there? I mean, what happens that Sunday? You go back to church, and what do you do from there?
So within 24 hours
Yeah.
of going to Mass, I reached out to a college fraternity brother of mine who lived on Staten Island, who I knew was fairly close to the impact zone, relatively low level, not far from the beach.
Yeah.
And so I checked in on him to see if he and his family were okay.
Okay.
He informed me that they were, that thankfully their home sat at a high enough elevation that they didn't have damage. But he informed me of another fraternity brother of mine who was not so lucky, who I didn't know.
Right. Okay.
The young man lived a half a block off the ocean. His neighborhood was in a mandatory state of emergency.
And this is after Hurricane Sandy.
Yeah.
A relationship with God that's not personal is not a relationship at all. Because of this, Pope Benedict said, let us ask ourselves, how is my personal relationship with God? Whether you have a personal relationship with God or not, you're invited to hear everyday Catholics share their stories of welcoming God personally and the difference it has made in their lives. Everyday Catholics are saying a personal yes to God. Listen to their stories and accept the invitation to say a deeper, more personal yes to God yourself.